Hello, this is Robert Rickover. I'm an Alexander Technique teacher in Lincoln, Nebraska. I teach in Toronto, Canada, and these days I teach pretty much all online. My guest today is Imogen Ragone, who's an Alexander Technique teacher in Wilmington, Delaware, and she also teaches online quite a bit. And we're going to run a little experiment. We're running a series of 3 separate experiments today. This is number 2. And Imogen has no idea what's coming up. But
he never tells me, so I don't know.
But she has the flexibility of thinking that one would hope to have in an Alexander teacher, and she just goes with the flow, and it's great. So, this is about shoulder girdles, your shoulder girdle. I'm going to run through something that you probably already know, but we'll just, for the sake of people who are not familiar with this, let's say you wanted to raise your arms up over your head and you just did that without giving a lot of thought to it. And you might do that and just do it a couple of times and just get a sense of how far your arms can go and how easy.
Kind of going to the top.
Well, you're just going a comfortable range of movement. You're not trying to push the limits. Just what's an easy range of movement. And then let's trace out your clavicle on one side. So there's this long bone that runs along here. You can feel it, right? It's pretty. It ends up in this area somewhere, and if you follow it in, it comes to an end at a little bump. And there are 2 of these little bumps, and they are joints. They're where the clavicles attach to the sternum. So they're not exactly ball and socket joints. They're not technically ball and socket joints, but they have a similar way of operating. So if you were to think, well, this whole area here, if there are these 2 joints here, and I would show someone on a skeleton just how much the clavicle moves. It moves a lot. You just don't see it on yourself that easily because it's under your skin. But if we were just to take a little circle that included those 2 bumps, those 2 joints. And we'll just call it a little circle of movement, that whenever you do anything with your arms, there's going to be some movement here. And specifically, if you think, well, I'm going to raise my arms over my head, as I raise them, I just know there's movement there. That's all. I don't worry about the details of that movement. It looks like you went a little higher, right?
I'm not sure, but yeah.
Just know there's movement here when you're moving your arms. And see if that produces a slightly different quality of movement, maybe a little bigger range, a little more ease. I don't know whether you notice that or not.
No, yeah. It's pretty subtle. I'm not sure.
So what were you thinking about when you raised your arm?
Yeah, just that there was movement.
There's movement here.
Movement there. I mean,
can you move your arm?
I have had the idea from a long time as an Alexander Technique teacher that these are very involved in the movement.
So you might have snuck.
So there might be something that nowadays
that could be
in my subconscious. Yeah, right. I think there was a little difference, but it was small.
So but for most new students, I find that when you introduce that idea of movement here, and just knowing there's movement, it's nothing beyond that. You don't want to get into the weeds about exactly what's moving where. It does make a difference in the ease of their arm movement, and they can use that for any arm movement, like reaching out to a keyboard or reaching up for something on a shelf or shaking hands with someone. Doesn't matter. Pretty much any arm movement's going to involve.
Just me doing a little experiment then with that forward movement, that was more noticeable to me. And I wonder if somehow that kind of upward movement, I've had it a bit mapped that this is involved. I know it's involved with this, but I it probably wasn't somehow as clear in my thinking or my understanding. But yeah, so that I'm curious, Robert, why limiting to this rather than the whole span of the
someone, not me, in this conversation is jumping ahead to the 3rd episode in our little series.
I'm so sorry.
But that is a logical question, and but let's actually we could even introduce that in this shorter version. So if that's the case, and you wanted to if you were to raise your arms, in fact, knowing that your whole torso is going to be involved in that movement, and there will be some movement everywhere, not just here, that we could go right into that. That'd be great. So if you raise your arms with that idea in mind, that as your arms have gone up, your entire torso has shifted. And when you bring your hands back down, your torso returns kind of to where it was, more or less. But let's say you were to raise your hands knowing your torso's involved, and go ahead and do that. And now the first version of this would be, when you go to lower your arms, you're just absolutely clear in your thinking that the only thing that's coming down is your arms. You're leaving your torso alone. Notice any difference?
Yes. I definitely feel like I retained some of that expansion that you get, some of the expansion that you get when you're, which is very similar to something I do with my own.
Well, this relates to power poses, of which you are a big fan, right?
Well,
or were, I don't know whether you
I was, and I still use elements of them, although I kind of don't use that term anymore so much.
Right.
Yeah, the power poses.
But the thing is, you could do this 2 or 3 times, like, oh, my whole torso was involved in this, and now I'm leaving it alone as I bring my hands down, and then, oh, let's do it again. My whole torso is involved, and I'm leaving it alone on the way down. It may even be a little more up. You could do 2 or 3 of those. So if nothing else, that would be a phenomenal thing for anyone who's spending a lot of time on Zoom or sitting at a desk doing anything, or standing, because this will work fine in standing too, to get a little out of any possible slump they may have sneaked into what they're doing. So there's that. There's that. Yeah. Okay. So just saying, as a way of looking after yourself, especially when you got a screen in front of you, which you might sneak in a little of this, well, raising your arms 2 or 3 times and lowering them in the way that we talked about will get you out of that pretty quickly. And so this is really kind of I would say a quick fix. You could do the same thing standing, and then go into a walk or something and see if your walk is different. But I'd like to end it here, because in our next little video we're going to do is going to take it a little further. So any questions about what we've done so far?
No, I have in a way, a similar thing that I do with my students. I have a slightly different thinking process that comes to the same thing. But I just thought I might mention that I call it the corkscrew, because it's like one of those corkscrews.
Yeah.
But the idea is, when the arms come down, this isn't coming down with the arms, the cork's still going up. So I think that's quite a nice image to
okay. Well, and we're gonna
to get across that idea.
Yeah, the whole idea is you get a little expansion on the way up, and you just continue that expansion on the way down.
Yeah.
And we're gonna go in. We're gonna in our next little chat discover another way of doing it, which has some interesting implications, especially for online teaching, but really for any kind of Alexander teaching. So we'll end this. We'll end this conversation. My guest has been Imogen Ragone. Thank you for the second time this morning.
You're welcome. Very, yeah.